Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. What a moment for Macclesfield. Out of existence 6 years ago, rescued, back on track, and now the first ever sixth-tier side to beat a side from the top flight. A bandaged centre mid scoring the opener against last year's winner. The same guy booting it clear as the final whistle went. Does it get any more magic of the cup than that? And who didn't well up by the sight of striker Ethan McLeod's parents, who lost their son weeks ago in a car crash in the dressing room? Chris says, have Crystal Palace saved the FA Cup? Firstly, giving clubs belief they can win it, and then providing a true cup set. Macclesfield 2, Crystal Palace 1. John, you are Macclesfield. We have talked to you about it when they went out of business. What joy.
Yes. Unbridled joy, really. Just, I suppose, bursting with civic pride. I wasn't there. I wish I could have been there, but I'm more than happy for everybody that was there. It was just an utterly golden moment. And as you said, I mean, I was thinking back this morning about when you called me from the show back when Mac was extinct. Macclesfield Town FC was out of business, and the desolation I felt that day, you know, because I haven't lived in Macclesfield for 25 years or so, 26 years nearly. And it's the club always provided that taste of home. I would see them when they played down south, and that connection was gone. I mean, I still go to Macclesfield an awful lot, but to see them back and to see the work that Rob Smethurst, the owner, and those around him have done, and just the happiness on faces. And I've been asked to do a couple of radio spots and writing. And the thing is, wonderfully enough, a guy on 5 Live said to me, well, you don't seem that happy about this. And the other guy that was on there was also of a similar amount. And basically, because we're from Mac, that's just not the way. You know, you it's an unassuming place. It's just sort of, yeah, it's good, yeah, great, yeah, but it's brilliant. But it's not a place to completely lose it and to get...
In the production meeting debrief, they'll be like, never get that miserable Mac fan on again. Well, we wanted someone bouncing off the walls. This is the happiest I've ever heard you, John.
Well, yeah, this is it, you see. I mean, it obviously wasn't familiar with my work, but it's just... I mean, Macclesfield as a club, and Sam has spent quite a bit of time there, has always struggled because it's in one of the greatest catchment areas for football in the world. I think we can say that. United and City are just up the road. You've got Stoke City, we're a Premier League club. That's only 15, 16 miles away. And Everton and Liverpool are not far away either. And Mac had a proud non-league history, had to fight for its own identity, and now enters history. You know, as this new club, as this Phoenix club, with this brilliant victory, with, you know, you mentioned the goal scorer, Dawson. I mean, he set it off from the very start, didn't he? Bleeding like Terry Butcher from the, you know, just it's just a clash of heads of which he soldiered on as if unaffected, and just. You know, I think Palace were surprised by how sunny it gets in Macclesfield. I think that was part of it. They were surprised by the 4G pitch, and they were beaten by, it has to be said, the better team. And I mean, we could go over Palace, but you know that I'm a big Adam Wharton fan. Yeah. But I'm not sure I'd have him in a six-a-side on a 4G. The surface just didn't seem to suit him, did it? But Matt were brilliant, and the work they've done and the remembrance of Ethan McLeod, there wasn't a hair out of place with what they did. Credit to Rob Smethurst, credit to everybody at the club. It's good to be Mac.
Yeah. And Barry, like it is like statistically the biggest ever FA Cup upset. And it's quite hard, I think, we've sort of talked about this before and other things, to sort of realise you're witnessing history. Like to put this with Ronnie Radford and Sutton United and all those. But that is 117 league places between these sides. You know, Palace, the holders of the FA Cup. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and by a strange quirk, the last time the holders were knocked out by a non-league side was 117 years ago. And the holders in question were Wolves, and the side that knocked them out were Palace. So it's just one of those little coincidences football throws up. I have actually seen people on social media try to denigrate Macclesfield's achievement by pointing out that, Crystal Palace didn't field a full-strength side, so it doesn't count as a proper joint killing. You'd have to have a heart made out of coal or flint to think that, and to try and in any way disparage an absolutely monumental achievement. I love the FA Cup. I love FA Cup shocks. I can remember all the biggies, and this is right up there, and probably, as you say, statistically, literally the biggest. There has never been a bigger gap, and Palace were the holders. I'm so pleased for John Rooney as well, because I was quite moved when I read last week that when Ethan McLeod tragically lost his life a few weeks ago, Rooney made the decision to ring each member of his squad individually and tell them this terrible news. That cannot have been an easy thing to do, and it's something he didn't have to do. So that a huge tip of the hat to him for that. And being John Rooney must be difficult, because you're Wayne Rooney's brother, and all anyone ever wants to talk to you about is Wayne Rooney, and you weren't as good as football as your brother. And for him to have this moment, where his moment in the sun that will forever be remembered, I think is lovely as well. So hats off to Macclesfield. I thought it was just a great story.
Yeah, and actually, like, it was really lovely seeing how emotional Wayne Rooney was, not to make it about him, and how proud of his brother he was. And it's always, Sam, injury time and the final whistle and just the moment when the fans know, right? And like, there was a couple when they were like, okay, this is it. I think Wharton banged one over the bar and you're like, this is it. And then the ref played on, and then it ended up with Dawson just anywhere. And then the full-time whistle goes, and just that is such an amazing moment.
Yeah, and all the stewards saying, "Oh, like, please stay off the pitch, no pitch invasions," and yet the owner is the first one on there. So, like, what are you going to do if your owner's on the pitch? There's just, as John said, I spent a lot of time around Macclesfield. I was up there on Thursday, actually, with them training. For all those who denigrate the achievement, people forget Mac were missing poor Danny Elliott, their top scorer in the competition. He got a hat-trick earlier in the round. I felt for him. I think he knew he was never going to play, but had to do all the pre-match media stuff because they didn't want Palace to have too much of an insight into their team selection. I mean, that club, it's just the heartbeat of the community again. Like, if you go down to the ground, they've done it up beautifully. There's a huge bar that's used for functions all the time. There's a gym there. There's people every day. John Rooney is, like, I spoke to him on Thursday, and he was just so proud about being able to stand on the touchline, because he started his career at the old Macclesfield Town. One of his first games, he came on in the 90th minute of the FA Cup third round game against Everton back in a long time ago. He finished his playing career
2009, Sam.
2009, was it? And he got promoted.
I was there
with Matt last year. Were you? And he's got Francis Jeffers as well as his assistant, who brings a lot of humour, likes to sit in the background, didn't really want to speak because he said, no, this is all about John, who has got the most beautiful white smile, by the way. Those teeth, I've never seen a whiter set of gnashes than John Rooney's. But yeah, so he finished, and he wasn't, Robbie Savage left last minute. John Rooney was in the gym on a Sunday before going back to pre-season on Monday, preparing as a player, and by the Tuesday he was taking training. So I mean, it's just so full of stories. The Ethan McLeod tragedy, and the players, they were at an away game, and McLeod drove home, and the team coach was in a traffic jam, and they actually drove past the accident, unbeknownst to them at the time that Ethan was involved. So, like, just the character they've shown. Paul Dawson's a brilliant footballer. I tell you what, he's had a hell of a week. He scored the winner against Radcliffe Borough on his birthday on Tuesday. Go and look at that goal. It is an absolutely brilliant strike. And that was after he and his teammates had spent time shoveling snow off the pitch to get this game on. They paid for their own covers. They needed the pitch to get covers. So they ended up training alongside students at Manchester Met. It's just one of those proper non-league stories. It's brilliant for them.
Yeah, and John, also, like, we mentioned the Dawson goal, like the Buckley Ricketts, it took like 25 minutes to dribble in. How brilliant. It's one of those where we all know it's going in, but we're all waiting, just waiting and waiting.
Just an incredible piece of improvisation. He sort of almost redirected himself in the air, didn't he? And then it sort of bobbled in along you're picking up those little 4G pellets as it rolled in. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that a friend of mine that was at the game, Paul, sent me a video of those final minutes from in the crowd, and just listening to the anxiety of the people there is quite a moment. And there was a lot of self-policing going on, and a couple of people sort of went a bit early and tried to get on the pitch. He's like, no, you get back off, and I've been at those games at Mac in the old days where they've won FA trophies, and it's one of those places where they're always going to go on the pitch, and and they did, and it was great to see Rob Smethurst leading the charge. I mean, on a 4G pitch, you're not going to spoil the pitch, are you? So why not get on there and celebrate and enjoy? Yeah. And wow.
Tell us a bit about Rob Smethurst, John.
Yeah, Rob's a local lad, actually, a friend of my sister, knows the family quite well. He is a local, made his money in the motor trade, was a very successful business, and then decided on a whim to, when the club went down, the old club went down back in 2020, decided to buy the club off Rightmove. Now, the way that Rob tells it is that he was in the middle of a 4-day session. Sessions have been part of Rob's makeup until quite recently. I think he's forsworn that actually at the moment. So, or perhaps forever, hopefully forever. And he just decided to do it on a whim. He's good friends with Robbie Savage from, the kids going to the same school and all that, down in the sort of Cheshire Village community. And the first thing they did actually, and this was the thing that Rob and those around him, and he would give credit to many of those around him, and they deserve it, the unnamed people, is that 4G pitch restored the club to the community, because people could play on it, people could visit it. The bar that you mentioned, I watched Euro 2020 in there. The old club had lost touch with the town. It's on the edge of town. It's on the southern tip of the town. You might not, like Cambridge United's ground is a bit out of the town. It's sort of
yeah.
You'd miss it if you weren't going there, if you see what I mean. And what they've done is they've restored it to the town, and people are proud of that club again and go to that club and use it, and it's part of how the town works. And it had lost that, and in creating and thinking through the business of it, he's put £4 million of his own money in. He's created a success story. I know recently he's moved. There are other owners involved, and he said that he's taken it as far as he can. But he was front and centre, deservedly so, on this, the greatest of all moments. And whatever happens now, Macclesfield had this moment, and I did want them to draw United in the next round, but that obviously relied on Manchester United actually winning a game, so that was not going to happen. But there's a line in a Mac Lads album, and excuse the language for 1 second, in which Mutley McLad, the singer, says, "Wait till you get Mac Town in 4th round. Play a fucking real team." There's a bit of Mac accent for you.
Lovely. I mean, for Palace fans, like, credit to them for giving their gate receipts to Macclesfield. We'll get on to City not giving Exeter theirs in a bit. I suppose if you're a Palace fan, you take this, given what happened last year. If you said, look, you'll win it, but then the next year you'll go out to this, you'd be like, they can't be disappointed with their 2 years of FA Cupness.
No, they'll both be remembered for very different reasons. They were dismal. They deserved to lose. This wasn't a backs against the wall, hang in there, lads performance. They were well beaten. I thought Oliver Glasner made all the right noises after the game. He said, "Look, we're disappointed. I'm embarrassed." He congratulated Macclesfield. It's one of those things. I mean, these upsets are always possible. I didn't see this one happening. I thought the gulf between the sides is too big. I think it's important to point out to any of our listeners outside the UK who might not be aware, like Macclesfield are a part-time team. They train twice a week. All their players have proper jobs, in inverted commas. So this is huge. And yeah, Palace fans will be annoyed, but I'd imagine they'll get over it pretty quickly if they haven't got it over it already. But it is an embarrassing blot to have in your copybook.
Yeah, I mean, they could still win the Conference League, couldn't they?
I was at West Ham yesterday, and a pal of mine who works for another publication had to put in a call to Crystal Palace because they had a photo of Oliver Glasner out in Soho on Saturday night. And he's like,
No way.
Yeah.
How dare he?
And there was a picture of him like having a drink, and he didn't. It was, and what's he supposed to do? I don't really know. I mean, it didn't look like he was having the world's best time. He was just there, but is he supposed to just lock himself away for days?
Yes, some football fans seem to think that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Mind you, if you're him, Soho's so busy. If I'd just been knocked out by Mactown, I would have just gone to the local, to be honest. But, maybe he lives in Soho. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's obviously being paid very well if he can afford to drink in Soho.
There's a Sam Smith pub there. I think you could just do just about all right. If
I'd be feeling rough in the
Any
morning.
other thoughts on Mactown? Yeah, of course. Sam, since you spent time with them, just any other thoughts on Mactown before we move on?
Oh, on Mac, I mean, I just echo what John says. Like the youth system, there's about 400 kids play for their youth teams. They've got an international academy. Like Rob does so much. He's just a really nice, genuine man. He's got time for everybody, and the club. He's always, and I think there's a few things in the pipeline as well, but they're always trying to extend their reach to try and bring people into it. Just on Palace, I feel really sorry for their fans. Like obviously they won the FA Cup, absolutely wonderful, but this should have been their big celebration season. They win the FA Cup. They get into the Europa League, and now all of a sudden they're in the Conference League. They're sort of treading water, aren't they? They're just waiting. They're in this season where they're waiting for their manager, the best manager they've arguably ever had, to leave, and their best player, Mark Gay, is going to run down his contract. So it must be a really weird season for Palace fans, like turning up, I was going to say week after week, but they've played so many games. It's like 2-3 times a week, and just nothing's really happening for them. I reckon a lot of them would have gone, yeah, we saw that coming on Saturday.
Barry, while this was on, you opted to watch Everton Sunderland in full. A game we'll dedicate maybe 5 seconds to on today's pod. But some familiar faces in the penalties missed column.
Yeah. It was an okay game, actually. Sunderland deserved to win. They were the only team trying to win the game. They went a goal up. Wonderful strike from
so good.
Enzo Lefebvre, volley from outside the box, just curled volley, beautiful. So that made up for his penalty miss during the week, the Panenka. Everton got a penalty. It shouldn't have been a penalty, but they got it and they scored it late doors. Game went to pens. Robin Roos saved all three of Everton's. I'd have saved all three of them, and I would have saved all three of them. It's not an exaggeration. Anyone would have saved them. They were terrible, and needless to say, Beto and Tierno Barry were two of the guilty parties. Terrible penalties. And the only thing I suppose to say from this, good win for Sunderland, and Everton fans were very upset with me at the start of the season when I suggested they'd be relegated. They're having a much better season than I thought they would, but Everton fans seem to be very unhappy with their team, with their lack of squad depth, and they were ravaged here by suspension, injury, and AFCON. I think there was 8 or 9 first-team regulars missing or unavailable for whatever reason, and they seem to be getting very unhappy with David Moyes. So it'll be interesting to see how their season pans out.
Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Manchester City 10, Exeter 1. I mean, not a surprise here, gentlemen, but a team scoring 10 is always a headline. And Sam, you were there, Sam, and you spent the day with Exeter. What a good luck charm. Will they ask you back again? It's a lovely piece you've written, by the way, sort of behind the scenes.
Thank you. I was very lucky. I was essentially on Exeter's backroom staff for the day. If you don't ask, you don't get, and they let me in.
Yeah.
By the way, City's XG, I don't know if you've seen it, 2.23 for 10 goals. Like, has there ever been
Was it
a bigger difference yet? 10 shots on target, 10 goals. They did score some screamers, and you felt for Exeter because at 5-6-0 they're bringing on Doku, Bernardo Silva, so like they didn't expect that strength aside. But yeah, they let me in, and Gary Caldwell's this ambitious young manager. He had a really good career, won the SPL a couple of times with Celtic, won the FA Cup himself with Wigan. So I was there. They went to Carrington on Friday with Manchester United, and Caldwell knows Fletcher very well from their Scotland days, so they trained there. And then they let me just completely in. And I tell you what, one of the staff, well, I always feel for everyone in that situation because like no one really wants a journalist, right, hanging around there. But they were all so welcoming to me. Everyone took the time to have a chat, say hello, introduce themselves. And one of his coaches, a guy called Dan Green, said to me, like, you wait until the gaffer speaks, like you will really see something. And yeah, it was like Braveheart, like just a couple of, like you would properly run through a wall of any material for this man. It was just a couple of minutes. It was really concise, short points, and he was so eloquent. And like at half time, the players were a bit shell shocked, and he laid into them and said, like it was a lack of commitment to the game plan. They'd worked so hard, they treated it like it was any other game. It was funny watching them training on Friday, and he was shouting instructions, and he's going, "Oh, and if their 9 does this," and I'm thinking, it's Erling Haaland, and you're just calling him their number 9, which I just thought was fantastic. And he just knew the right things to say. Like there was a guy called Jack McMillan who has played every minute for Exeter pretty much this season. He got injured in training midweek, so wasn't out of it. So just 10 seconds of his pre-game speech was about, like, if you're going to do it for anyone, do it for Jack. So he just made everyone feel part of it. And at the end, I just basically said, look, you guys are not going to be defined by this, and if you learn from this, it'll be a good experience. And he talked about how simple it was. Like they weren't flashy, Man City, they were just brilliant. We just have to learn from it, and it was like a lesson. I think the players, he does it quite a lot. He asks questions, he's interactive, he wants them to come back at him. Yeah, it was a fantastic day. I mean, to be walking around the tunnel and see all that going on. And sadly, I didn't quite get the invite to go in with Pep Guardiola for a glass of wine afterwards, which I guess is fair enough. Maybe next time. But to be around, they were watching the players when they got there, and they were warming up, stretching in the dressing room. They were watching that Macclesfield game on the screen, and the cheer when the second goal went in. It was like they was just well behind Mac, but also there was this little bit of maybe we can, maybe we can do it. And at the end, the thing that Caldwell did draw out was George Birch, who's one of their academy lads, who scored that left-footed screamer. And he said, look, I have never celebrated a goal at 9-0 down like that, and the whole staff did. But he'd been on loan at Western-super-Mare until 2 days ago. He'd only just they called him back in, and it was all about courage and the way he played. But yeah, to get that insight, I mean, those Manchester City dressing rooms, it's like amazing there. There's 4 or 5 different rooms. They put more pizza in after the game. I think they must have left 30 full pizzas in Exeter. They were well looked after, and I know some people give them a bit of criticism on social media when they've put on posts saying, "Oh yeah, really, like we loved the experience," but like, all right, they lost 10-1, but that can happen. But it's enjoyed the right word. I think for a lot of those players, it's the biggest thing that they will ever get to see, and they're all excited about swapping shirts and things like that. But Caldwell and his team, like Exeter have the lowest budget in League One, and he's got them pretty much to mid-table 3 years in a row, and I think that's a big achievement.
Yeah, I believe a young Dalling is more upset with their performance than you are, but that's okay. Just quickly, Sam, I don't know, because Palace gave their gate receipts to Macclesfield, it doesn't mean Man City have to give their gate receipts to Exeter, but Exeter are fan-owned, and they did ask for it because it wasn't put on TV, which was sort of quite surprising, really. I guess TV companies would say, well, look, the result was the result, so it proved correct. But a lot of games, Cambridge Birmingham was on TV. I mean, like, I love Cambridge, but that's a weird choice, isn't it? So should we criticise City for not, giving Exeter some money?
We should criticise Exeter, or whoever asked.
Yes.
City. That's who should be criticised. My understanding, it was the Supporters Trust who asked, and they asked publicly. And I think if they'd asked privately, City might well have given them the money. But because they asked publicly, it's almost like they're trying to shame them into giving them the money. So I think City were dead right to say no. Who knows? City may in the course of time go, actually, here you go, do it quietly. They probably won't, but they might. But no, I think the supporters' trust, if that is who made this public request for the money, were wrong to do that.
Yeah, I think there's that element. So the supporters' trust own Exeter City, and the Exeter aren't in the sort of financial peril they were in 20 years ago when they got that draw up at Old Trafford and then the replay, which effectively saved the club. But the supporters' trust has, I think, loaned the club about 600 grand since last summer. So yeah, doing it publicly, like a lot, you hear a lot about footballers who do these acts of charity, but the sort of stipulation is like, don't tell anybody. Like, I don't want the publicity for it. And I think you don't want to set a precedent, right? Because if you do it once, and I know you have to do it every time, or there's pressure on you. Like, is it fair on the other League One clubs? I don't know. But also, and this is not knocking Crystal Palace at all. It's brilliant what they did, but what are the sums of money we're talking about here? It's all very well. It's probably much easier to give up half of 5,000 tickets at a maximum of 30 quid a head when a lot of them are kids, as opposed to 40, 50,000, including a whole load of hospitality and things. So very different sums. But yeah, I'm with Barry a little bit. I think you can't set a precedent, and I think if you're going to do it quietly. Don't try and push someone into a position, because I think if someone tries to push me into something, I know what my natural instinct is, and it's to nudge them back a little bit harder. Not physically.
On a lighter note, when George Burke scored that wonderful goal for Exeter, on Match of the Day, Conor McNamara said that at least Exeter fans could talk about his goal all the way home on the bus. Now, we have to try and get through 30 games in an hour today. It's 241 miles from the Etihad to Exeter's ground, and it takes 4 hours and 16 minutes to get there. I think halfway through hour 4, if the bloke next to me is still talking about George Birch's goal, I'd be inclined to ask him to stop.
To Old Trafford then, Man United 1, Brighton 2. Ross says, now in the midst of a season consisting of only 40 games, the fewest they've played since 1914-15. Should Manchester United take advantage of the additional time on the training ground and experiment with 3 at the back? Yes, John, another defeat. The Darren Fletcher era is over. The breaking news is that Michael Carrick is the favourite, not Solskjaer, to get the gig. What did you make of this game?
FC Buzz Killington to the rescue again. Yeah. Well, not a particular surprise. The sight of Danny Welbeck against Manchester United is one of dread.
Always.
Why did they ever sell him? I still think that. He's a Manchester lad. He loved the club and all that. And Brighton are just the type of team that makes mincemeat out of this Manchester United team at the moment, which is obviously very confused. And yeah, that statistic that this will be the fewest games played since the outbreak of World War I or whatever is incredibly stark. But can they find some way of making it fewer games? I mean, can they just sort of not play the other games and just stop? Should they just say, right, we're done here and that's it? I mean, they can't get relegated, I don't think. So, do they just say that's it? We're packing up for the season?
Just like Sunday League, you get an email on the Saturday night going, they can't raise a team, so you get 3-0.
They're disbanded. Yeah, they've I mean, it's just. I feel sorry for Darren Fletcher. I briefly had this flash of a manager with a Scottish accent. That feels reassuring. But then I remembered that they also had another manager with a Scottish accent, and that wasn't so reassuring. And yeah, poor Fletch. Welcome, the new caretaker. It feels like something I say every year because it is. So, yeah.
I mean, Welbeck's goal was brilliant. He does really well for the first goal as well, but his finish is so good. 8 goals in 19 games against Manchester United. Šeško made it 2-1. And then, Barry, late on, Shea Lacey is sent off. I mean, his first yellow could have been a red. Then he throws the ball away. And he looked so sad. It was like looking at my 3-year-old when you tell him no more Thomas the Tank Engine. Like this tiny guy crying. And on Match of the Day, they were like, I think you shouldn't send him off because he's young. It doesn't really work like that. But you did feel for the lad.
Didn't.
Okay. But that heart
I'm
of granite is back, I guess.
I'm of an age where any misfortune that befalls Manchester United or anyone connected with them is always welcome. I suppose the ref could conceivably, as some people have argued, shown him some leniency because he's young, but that's not how these things work. And he seemed genuinely baffled when the second yellow came out. He kept going, "What for? What for?" And he must have known what it was for. He lost his head in a little way and threw the ball away in frustration, and that is a booking. Some refs don't give it, some do.
He had a worse weekend than his brother, who played for Mac, by the way, at left back.
Is that right?
So it was a mixed weekend for the Lacey brothers. He's
Laceys.
going to be some player. Yeah. I saw someone on.
Oh, he looks good,
Yeah, he came on against Burnley midweek and hit the bar. But I saw someone on social media. He put this apology up on social media, and someone picked up and was like, "It's great you have an apology, but the fact he'd taken time to put 3 pictures of himself walking off the pitch underneath the apology, it's just like if you're really apologising, is that what you are? He probably is genuinely apologising, but you can see his PR team have probably gone through and found the 3 best pics of him being sent off to add to his apology, which is just modern football.
So he's 18 and he's got a PR team. Okay. Game's gone.
Well,
Game's
we don't
gone.
know yet.
No,
Possible,
know.
isn't it? Possible.
Was that his
Anyway,
mum?
maybe he doesn't. Grant's, yeah. Grant says, when discussing Spurs Villa, can we spend a bit of time talking about the 2 great Villa goals and how well they dug in during the second half rather than another Spurs post-mortem? I would love to not do another Spurs post-mortem, John, but I'm worried that's the direction of travel with this game.
It's a Spurs story, I'm afraid, isn't it? I did think, actually, and I heard a wild rumour last night. Not particularly wild if you think about it. And I did think we were going to have to talk about Thomas Frank being sacked instead of Macclesfield's triumph, which rather annoyed me. But it turns out that hasn't happened yet. There is some confusion.
Wait till 10 o'clock.
Wait till 10 o'clock, yeah.
It's only 8 minutes to 9.
Okay, yeah, good point, Baz. Yeah, there is confusion, I am told, at the club over what to do, which wouldn't be the first time that's been a state of affairs. It's a terrible mess. As I've spoken many times in the past, I was a huge admirer of Thomas Frank at Brentford. He hasn't found the key to whatever the riddle at Tottenham is. Neither has anybody else, really, for quite a long time now. The club's change of ownership or change of leadership hasn't really produced any change of... the club is even more directionless than it was before. That appears to be the big problem. Thomas Frank is the guy that bears the brunt of it. His team aren't playing well enough. We've spoken many times about how at that stadium is a seething well of discontent, and so it proved again. Well done, Aston Villa. Their season continues to be really good. We probably don't praise Aston Villa enough. I agree with the original email. Let's just say they're having a brilliant season. They've got a brilliant manager. Enjoy it, Aston Villa fans. You deserve to. But Spurs, it's Spurs West Ham at the weekend, isn't it? I'm going to be there.
Man alive.
I'm going to be there. And, it's going to be a real cheery occasion, I think. Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, the thing is, Sam, like you have to give a manager time at some point. Like it's not enough time. But then what if you give the wrong manager loads of time? Do you know what I mean? Like that's the difficult thing, I think, because Frank is so nice and he's so affable, and you think, God, I really want it to work for this guy, but maybe that's just not how this thing works. Like Johnny Lou said on Thursday, like all the goals from last season aren't there. Like none of the goals. So that does make a difference.
Yeah, it does. But I think I've said it on earlier pods that he lost the fans very early, within a month, and once you've done that, it's a big old mountain to climb. And I can't really say anything new. I really like Thomas Frank, but it's sad actually to see him like this. He's lost a bit of his energy, a little bit of his bounce. He was always flashing smiles when he was at Brentford and cracking jokes, and it's just like, this is a man who's been broken by a gig. So maybe the best thing for him
not
is
the
to
first,
take that out.
not the last. Yeah, who will be the next to be broken? Man United and Spurs, just unmanageable football teams, and they got a bit chippy. Spurs at the end. Paulinho was trying to just kick absolutely everything. There was a bit of a to do at the end. Anyway, to St James's, Newcastle 3, Bournemouth 3. Newcastle threw on penalties, the endless penalty shootout, Sam. It was extraordinary. Was it just, I just thought, you kept thinking this has got to be it now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's the blooming run-ups. I don't know if anyone's done the stats on the sort of how much the chances of you missing a penalty increases when you do these stuttered run-ups, because I think Bruno and Voltemade did. I don't know if they're ready. I haven't seen the Everton Sunderland penalty shootout. But yeah,
they were all short run-ups.
Were they? It's just like, because you hear a lot of the football, and Anthony Gordon's penalty was a good example. A lot of them talk about visualization, like good penalty takers. They're constantly thinking about where they're going to put the ball. They might be in the shower in the morning or brushing their teeth, and they're thinking about where they're going to put that ball. And you're just thinking, well, if you're doing a stuttered run up like that, you're sort of concentrating on something different, or you're waiting for the keeper to move. So actually, you're trying to control someone else rather than what the bits that you can actually control. But it was a good moment for Aaron Ramsdale getting a couple of saves in, because he had a bit of a run when Nick Pope was injured, and probably isn't going to play in the league for Newcastle again. I'm not sure they're that convinced about him. Brilliant kicker, but he not as good a shot stopper as Nick Pope. So a good moment for him, and another ridiculously fun game at St James's Park. And Eddie Howe has done. They've done exactly what they needed to do. They've won 3 league games in a row, and now gone through in the cup. Last thing they wanted, as Hal said, was extra time, because they've got Manchester City on Tuesday in the Carabao Cup semi-final. They've beaten sides that they not should be beating, but need to be beating if they want to achieve their ambitions. And it gives them some momentum into what is like a massive couple of weeks. They've got Champions League games against PSV and PSG, two-legged Carabao Cup semi-final. They've got Liverpool in the league.
I'm tired listening to Sam describing Newcastle's fixture list. How much football has been played already this year? I was watching the game maybe Saturday, and they just said, and on Tuesday we'll have Carabao. I'm like, what? There can't be more football.
David Mitchell's here.
Yeah, it's just this 2026 has been the most relentless year of football ever. It feels like it. It's just never going to stop.
AFCON special tomorrow, by the way, which is happening at the same time as all of this. Voltemade's pass for the Barnes, the opener, is beautiful. And there was a great shot of a child telling Tavernier to fuck off when he equalised in the 122nd minute. That was lovely. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. We'll try and do the rest of the games in part 3. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. John, a Forest fan, writes, what's worse for a Premier League team, losing to a team in the National League North, or losing to some Hollywood pricks who are going to stick their win in a fucking documentary and set it to emotionally swelling music like some bugger being told they're going to judges' houses on bloody pop idols? Taking defeat well there, John, I see. This was another good game, Barry, and a penalty hero in Arthur Okonkwo, the Wrexham keeper.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about him. I sort of Googled him. He was a kid at Arsenal and is now at Wrexham. He was one of several Wrexham heroes, I suppose. I don't know really what to make of Wrexham. We all know the story. They've done a huge amount for the town in Wrexham. They've created a lot of employment. They've generated a lot of interest in it. They've brought a lot of tourism to the town, a lot of money to the town. Then there are bad bits as well, like accepting taxpayer money in the form of grants, non-repayable grants that they don't need. That seemed a bit off to me. But I think it's a far more of a good news story than a bad news one. I don't think this really classifies as an upset. I kind of expected Wrexham to win this game. It was notable that Sean Dyche, he doesn't go overboard when his sides win, and he doesn't go overboard when they lose, but he was clearly very angry with Forest's first half performance here. He made the point, there's a lot of players knocking on my door wondering why they're not in the first team. Well, they were in it tonight, and they found out why they're not in it. We all saw why they're not in it. And I went had a look like who did he hook at half time. James McAtee, he hasn't been getting much of a look in at Forest, and he was terrible. Alexander Zinchenko and Delane Bakwa, they were the ones that went off at half time. But a really good win for Wrexham. Look forward to seeing it again in the documentary, as someone has said. And it was a really good game. Really good game.
I did the minute by minute on this game, and the commentary seems to be obsessed with Ryan Reynolds' dress, because he kept changing his shirt and putting a gilet on, and put on Rob Mack's shirt at one point and then swapped to a gilet. And I was actually more interested in the fact that Sean Dyche, in weather that was absolutely horrendous, did his pre-match duties in shorts. And I thought, yeah, that is classic Dyche, isn't it? Yeah, but as Barry said, he was seething after. But by which point he was wearing tracksuit bottoms. But there you go.
Sheffield United 3, Mansfield 4. Mansfield 12th in League One. Maybe the club in the EFL with the fewest mentions on Football Weekly. Producer Joel saying, I can't even remember writing their name before, but what a brilliant result for them. They were 4-1 up, 5,000 travelling fans. 2 goals for Louis Reed in the first half. One of them an absolutely brilliant goal. Rhys Oates was great all day. And an absolutely brilliant smash it anywhere just before full time from someone. I don't know if anyone has any further thoughts on Mansfield. This is their moment. Sam, yes, go for it.
On Reed, I think he's actually Sheffield United's youngest ever player, and it was Nigel Clough, who is the current Mansfield manager, who gave him his debut about 10, 12 years ago. So a nice little return to them double. They just go a little bit under the radar because just Clough doesn't seem to like. Clough doesn't really like to do any media, but they've done really well. They've got out of League Two and stabilised in League One. So I hope they get the sort of big draw that they'll be desperate for in the next round, because then maybe they might get a mention on Guardian Football Weekly 2 months in a row if they get a big draw next up.
It is probably worth pointing out to that reader who wrote in complaining about our lack of coverage of Aston Villa, who we talk about in pretty much every single podcast without fail, that this is Mansfield's first ever mention in almost 20 years.
Well, but being from Macclesfield, I spend a lot of time saying, no, I'm not from Mansfield, I'm from Macclesfield. I should say, Nigel Clough, a man that doesn't age, does he? He looks exactly the same as when I first saw him play 40 years ago. And the other thing I heard recently about Clough Jr., he's not particularly junior these days, is that he's one of the most anti-analytics coaches in football these days, which I thought was quite interesting. But
good,
the old school way. So all power to Nigel. All power to Nigel.
Exactly. As Cloughie Senior just said, the ball is this is your friend. Judging the football going, this is your friend. Look after it. Port Vale 1, Fleetwood 0, Wigan 1-1 at Preston, Leicester 1-2 at Cheltenham. A Strand Larsen hat-trick as Wolves hammered Shrewsbury 6-1. 2 wins and 2 draws in the last 4 now for Rob Edwards. Perhaps a come and get me plea for Strand Larsen. Burton won 5-0 at Boreham Wood. Burnley 5, Millwall 1. Anyone else utterly staggered to see Ashley Barnes?
Yes.
I mean, yes, thank you, Barry.
I was at Burnley the other week, and there was some substitutes warming up, and there was a chap who had not just a receding hairline, but one of those on the back of your head, like there was no hair.
Yeah.
And these lads behind me were like, yeah. And this group of lads were behind me, were like, oh, that looks a bit like Ashley Barnes. Like, it could be. And then this went on for about 5 minutes, and they didn't really expect it to be Ashley Barnes. And then then he actually came on, because he barely comes on for them. And in the 89th minute, introducing as a substitute Ashley Barnes, and they just couldn't believe that he's still there. But I think he went away, and then they re-signed him for the promotion season. I think he's just very good. One of those in inverted commas to have around the dressing room. I think he's quite good fun and a character. Like Parker obviously doesn't trust him much, if at all, to play in the league. I mean, they were chasing a game with no strikers, and he didn't come on until the 89th minute or something when I was there. But yeah, lovely to see him get a mention.
The last mention I saw of Ashley Barnes was in conjunction with a horse racing related story. And I'm going, is that Ashley Barnes? And it was. So yeah.
Did he win the 5:35 at Haydock? What happened?
I'll leave it to others to go and Google it.
Right.
Let's just say Ashley might not have been behaving himself as well as he might.
Noted. Okay. Southampton won 3-2 at Donny. Fulham 3, Middlesbrougugh 1. A lovely Harry Wilson outside of the left foot assist there. Ipswich beat Blackpool 2-1. Brentford 2-0 at Sheffield Wednesday. Wonderful strike from Stoke City's Le Cisse against Coventry to put them through. Bristol City 5, Watford 1. Ashton Gate looks like the biggest pitch in the world. Whenever I see it, which is rarely, I go, that's enormous. We lost 3-2 to Birmingham, 3-0 down. Solly Kaikai scored twice in the mist and fog at the Abbey. I thought, we've got a chance here, but it didn't happen. Keith says, after watching the closely contested championship game between West Ham and QPR, did any of the panel have a slight panic attack? I think they'd actually slept in until August. Scott says, a West Ham back. You were there, John, for this.
Yes, as my career as chronicler of misery, I was asked to attend this one. It was, a championship game in waiting. West Ham made fairly heavy work of it. QPR, a couple of quite promising forwards in Coley and Kone, though they struggled to service him a bit. Some great stuff from Steve Cook and Jimmy Dunn, proper old-style defending from them. Some positive signs for West Ham. I think we can actually introduce this rather rogue concept. Tati Castellanos scored had quite a good game and scored a good goal. I was surprised to see that Crysencio Somerville, that was only his second goal for West Ham. It feels like he's been there a while. And that probably shows you where it's been going wrong for that club with its transfer business. It was Kids for a Quid Day, a lot of shrieking Cockney voices to be heard in the stands, which I did enjoy. It wasn't.
Do they have
empty.
like fizzy jellied eel sweets? Something like sort of like Haribo jellied eels?
Well, no, do you know what? That would be an idea, though. I did have a young lady ask me, who's with her 2 kids, ask me, is there anywhere to buy a coffee? Because all they do is seem to sell beer here, which I thought was a great point. It's not really family oriented, and it's you were granted a vision of perhaps that stadium's future, which is that as a championship ground, and that's a fairly bleak prospect. There were the usual protests, the 2 sets of fans joining that. So whenever you go to West Ham, the fans, one set of fans sings, "You sold your soul for this shithole." And then the West Ham fans sing, "We sold our soul for this shithole." And you hear it every time you go there. And that's it. That's the London Stadium experience. It lifted me out in my sick bed. And do you know what? Weirdly enough, I felt better after going. So there you go.
God, you must have been feeling rough. But as we said, they go to Spurs next week. So hello, Dr. Tottenham. Grimsby 3, West Ham Supermare 2. Grimsby found this harder than when they beat Man U in the Carabao. Oxford won on penalties against MK Dons. Liam Rossini got a 5-1 win in his first game in charge at Charlton. Derby won Leeds 3. Colby Bishop gave Pompey the lead after 3 minutes. They had that moment. That's where the fun stopped. A hat-trick from Martinelli. 3 goals from corners for Arsenal. Hull beat Blackburn on penalties. Norwich 5, Walsall 1. A shout-out for Courtney Clark's consolation. And West Brom beat Swansea on penalties. Any strong thoughts, anyone, on any of those games? Anything that we may have missed? Or have we successfully done every match?
Madueke's penalty. And I also enjoyed Jonathan Pearce's dissection of why it had gone wrong, which I thought, JP's been in a game a long time and knows a bad left-footed penalty when he sees it. I thought that was great commentary. Well done. Yeah,
well, JP was obviously there for the failed Panenka and the utter fury.
Well, so was I. Yes.
Sunderland for JP, yeah. Yeah, but you weren't as angry as Jonathan Pearce. A smite on the game it was. Barry?
Just to say that Stoke City won, Coventry 0, a game which probably flew under most people's radar. Lamine Sisse's winner was a spectacular volley, one of many fine volleys struck over the weekend.
I'm going to get technical. Was it a volley? Are you sure it was a volley?
Well, I have written down a brilliant volley. So
interesting. I thought he was just running onto the ball and smashed it. But
I've had to digest a lot of information over the last 48 hours.
Have a lie down. Sam.
I might have got some of it wrong.
if you watch his celebration, so he ends up doing a knee slide. And football pitches are quite big. There's quite a big area, but he ends up knee sliding into Frank Lampard's technical area, which I don't know what Frank Lampard has done to him previously. I don't know if there's a bit of beef between the two of them, but you think, I know you're overcome with emotion, but at least do it into your own technical area. Leave poor Frank alone.
Suppose it depends how far away he started. If he unintentionally, he started like 20 yards away, and that's just where he ended up. Don't know how. I haven't done a knee slide for a while to know how easy or not it is to stop yourself.
Just one other thing, actually. I meant to mention it when I was doing Everton Sunderland. I forgot. Everton wheeled out this fourth kit, a kind of navy blue, purpley type thing. And that seems to have incensed quite a lot of their fans that they didn't play in royal blue at home as they're supposed to. So it's some sort of money-making wheeze that wasn't appreciated by their fans in early January, understandably enough.
Yeah, of course. Bangkok Blue says, what's Barry's current 5K PB? How is the running going, Barry?
It's gone all right. The longest run I've done so far is 6.5 miles. I think my 5K PB is about 35 minutes. Which is all right for a big lumbering oaf like me. The thing that's annoying me about the running is, well, apart from the running, is the fact that I'm doing all this running, and not only have I not lost weight, I've actually put on weight. So that's kind of pissing me off. But I know why it is.
Yeah.
I'm because I'm running.
You're becoming a muscle.
Giving myself permission to eat all sorts of shite I normally wouldn't, like ice creams and crisps and crap like that. So I need to cut out that.
And when is the race? When's the race?
The race is on the 12th of April. 12th of April. Yeah, race is a very strong word for it. It is technically a race. I see it more of a victory lap.
/ ordeal. Anyway, Good on you. 6.5 miles. I would struggle to go and do that. Not that I'm not cider wheater. So I'm not saying that.
I mean, also the running. Every time I go for a run, the first bit is the hardest. So I always really, really hate the first mile or 2 miles, and then it gets progressively easier, and then I find the end quite easy.
Right,
if you know
should
what
do
I
the
mean.
Marathon des Sables. What's that? A marathon a day through this Sahara. By mile 386, you'll be skipping along. Anyway, you can donate to Barry. Just Google "Just Giving" Barry Glendenning. All money going to Great Ormond Street. So yeah,
yes, the donations have rather dried to a trickle. So if you haven't donated,
pull your finger out.
But Barry is our Sarah Cox. Isn't I've always thought Barry was quite similar to Sarah Cox, so there you go. Or Eddie Izzard, one of these ultra bazathon.
I see myself more as a Kevin Sinfield type.
Wow, a real hero.
Man of steel.
Aravanan says, hi, Max and Barry, long-time listener of the pod from California. Recently got a tribal hand tapped tattoo in Borneo. To distract myself from the pain, of course, I had to put on my earphones and listen to the pod. Am I the only listener to ever get a tribal hand tapped tattoo whilst listening to the pod? Probably. Keep up the great work. It's a tattoo? What? It's tapped in by hand, I guess. Wow. I presume that's it.
Oh,
so
right. Rather than with a
yeah. Holy moly. How hard do you have to tap for it to be there forever? I was in your front row at the Troxy. I look forward to your next live show, hopefully in America. Possible news on a live US show soon. If we're let in. Should I have said that? I don't know. Panic. Anyway,